Okay guys, so just in the interest of time and thanking everybody for being here on time and being respectful of Sonia and David's time, we're going to start. So thank you everybody for being here. For those of you who don't know, David Feld and Sonia Kalia, they are awesome realtors. If you've ever done business with them, or when you do business with them, you will see that their reports to your buyers are very, very thorough, especially for condos because there's so many other different things to think about, whether it's new construction or not. So there's the plug.
Thank you.
I'll leave it to you for the education.
I appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Hi everybody. My name is David Feld. This is my wife Sonia Kalia. We're from Feld Kalia. Our slogan is "We Are Law," so that's what we think. We do strictly residential real estate law, and today we're both going to give you a talk about is new construction and assignments. So we won't talk about resale. We're not going to talk about houses. That's another time. There's our website. If you ever want to use our website, you just go to wearelaw.ca. You can click start here and right away you can type in your email address, the purchase price, and we'll give you a quote right away. You can forward that to your clients, or you can put your client's email address in. It sends them an all-inclusive quote. It's really easy for them to get started. So let's get right into it. View, present, perfect. Okay, so let's see. David, Sonia says I like pocket squares, and Sonia knows everything. That's all you need to know about us for now. Today we're going to get through a bunch of stuff. I'll talk pretty fast. You can stop me anytime with questions. I'm going to talk about new construction, and which will dovetail right into assignments really nicely. So let's get right into it. Number one, the rescission period. So whenever you take your client to buy a new construction property, they have 10 days to get out of the contract from the time you sign the agreement. Okay. That doesn't happen in resale. In resale, we have conditions and things like that to help us get out of a contract if we need to. But with new construction, it's the law under the Condominium Act that you have 10 days to get out of the contract, okay? So it's super important to get that contract to a lawyer for review right away, because you can imagine it would take the lawyer a day or 2 or 3 to review such a large contract. Maybe there are suggestions they want to make to the builder. We'll get into that regarding caps and deletions and things like that. So as a good realtor, I think it's important that you make sure that your client, as soon as they sign an agreement, they get it to a lawyer for review right away, okay? Otherwise, at the end of the 10-day cooling off period, the deal becomes automatically firm. Your purchaser must complete, and they've had no chance to negotiate or anything like that with the builder, okay? So, time is of the essence. You want to get things done quickly. That's the 10-day cooling off period, okay? Days include weekends, you should know. So if you sign on a Friday, that's day 1. Saturday is day 2, Sunday is day 3. Time is ticking, so things move very, very quickly when it comes to that, okay? Another quick thing is if you're going to get amendments from the builder, which you want to cap certain costs, which we'll get into, you want to get them signed. So make sure that you as the agent see a signed copy by your client and by the builder. Because fast forward 5 years down the road, if you don't have a signed amendment, it could be an argument with the builder. Well, we didn't sign that, there was no amendment, they could say. You can fight it saying, how did I get the amendment, because they're the ones who make it, but you don't want to get into that. Guys, it has to be in writing, so everything has to be in writing. Okay, good. So, I won't get into our process, we have our process here, but just quickly, the general process with any law firm is, you sign the agreement, you get it to a lawyer, the lawyer would review it, have a call or an email in our case, or both in our case with the client, and then you request caps. And that can be done via the agent or via the lawyer, depending on the situation, depending on the builder, and depending on the law firm. And those are discussions we have with each file. Then at the 10-day mark, if your client does not wish to go forward with the property, it's very easy. They can send an email to the builder or go to the builder and return the agreement. Just say we do not wish to go forward, we want our deposit back. No questions asked, they get their money back, they can walk away. That's what the 10-day rescission period is for. However, at 5 p.m. on the 10th day, the deal is firm and they cannot get out. It is next to impossible to get out of the agreement, okay? So, there are 2 closings when it comes to new construction, not 1. We're used to in resale seeing 1. There's a closing date, you close, that's it. But for new construction, when we're talking about condos, there are 2 closings. There's an interim closing or occupancy closing, and there's hints in each of those words about what it is. And then there's the final closing, which typically occurs 3 to 6 months later. We'll talk about that. But we're talking about the interim or occupancy closing now. So basically, once the city issues an occupancy permit, the place is habitable, and that's when occupancy starts. Just before that, your client will do a pre-delivery inspection or PDI, and that'll be arranged with the builder. They'll find deficiencies in the unit, that's normal, and the builder will go on to fix them under the Tarion warranty, that's normal. But, so once that's done, you as the purchaser move into the property to occupy it, and you're paying actually rent to the builder to live there for 3 to 6 months typically. Those are called occupancy fees. I'm going to talk about those in a minute, okay? During that time when you're living there, you can't rent the property out to someone else, you can't sell it, you can't transfer it, you don't own it, you're occupying it, okay? And the hints are interim, so it's like halfway through, and occupancy, you're occupying the unit, okay? So you're doing this for 3 to 6 months, and again, a good lawyer explains this to the clients, and a good agent explains this to clients up front, so that they have, the expectation is that they'll know that this is going to happen. Okay, so something that you can always expect and your client can always expect are delays. With new construction, when you see a closing date in that very first few days, that's just a placeholder. It's like, we're going to close around this time. It's always delayed, it's always pushed forward, and there's certain notices they have to give and certain times under the Tarion warranty. And we're not going to get into those, but we can, or if you ever have questions, you can email us directly with that. There's costs, so we expect like there's costs. Like if the purchase price is $500,000, you're not paying $500,000 for the property. In a resale, you are. You're paying $500,000, and you're going to pay one small amount for property taxes as an adjustment, and if it's a condo, one small amount for condo fee adjustments for the month. But with new construction, this is a sort of number you can write down. You're going to pay between 6 to 9, it's just hitting 9 these days, % on top of the purchase price to the builder. And that includes a lot of things. That includes all the builder's closing costs that they're going to charge. That includes land transfer tax. That includes legal fees. That even includes 1 year of property taxes. We throw it all in there so that you can quote to your clients, like generally speaking, if they ask you, what do I have to pay on top of my purchase price? You say it's anywhere from 5 to 9%. And I'll tell you guys, right now it's sitting at like the 7-8%. I noticed that these days. So 7 to 8% is what I'm noticing. So you could say that with some confidence. Just always say, don't hold me to it. And I always say, don't hold me to it, of course. So we talked about delays, there's costs. And then I told you about deficiencies. There are going to be deficiencies. It's a new construction. So you want to manage your client's expectations. So see, that's why I wrote expect on top, because again, a client who knows what's going to happen won't be upset, but if you haven't prepared them, they can be upset at any step along the way. So I don't want to get too much into the pre-delivery inspection, but there will be a third party there. They'll attend with your client. You can attend with your client. Do any of you do new construction, or have you? No, this is new to most of you. You've done some new. Do you go on the PDIs with them? You do. So that's a good thing. Like, that's a good check-in point just for good service. Two, you're holding their hand, you haven't seen them in a couple of years, they're going to give you a referral from it, so it's like good business anyway, right? Anyway, so that's good. A lot of agents don't go, so an agent that goes sort of stands out. It's good. If your client can't go, you might consider going for them. Someone should go that's not nobody, because if it's nobody, they will elect a 16-year-old person to go do it, and that person might not care as much as the buyer or as much as you. So again, that's what it is. Nothing against 16-year-olds or millennials. Okay. So things, I don't want to get too deep into this, but things that you can do when you do your PDI, operate the systems, operate the appliances, check your finishes, check the upgrades. That's a big one. A lot of people pay for upgrades in advance 3 years ago, and when they get to the property, sometimes there's no the upgrade wasn't done. So how do you deal with that? Again, first of all, address it, know that it exists, and then there are ways to deal with it. One, do you get the money back? Maybe. Two, is there some arrangement you can make with the builder? Again, those are legal issues that we would get into if it happened. We don't need to go.
David,
yeah.
Do you have this presentation, sort of like your branded version?
If you email me after, I'll send this exact presentation to you, branded with KW for you. Okay?
No, I meant branded for you.
With me and you, it's both.
Oh, terrific.
We're
It's okay, people will know where we're getting it. We need to have you.
Exactly, no problem. Okay, so during interim, again, you don't own the property, you're renting, and you're actually, like, to take it a step further, you have no rights under the Residential Tenancies Act the way you would think you do. So you know how your tenants, if you have any tenants or if you've dealt with tenants, they have a lot of rights. It's not the case here. So if you actually stopped paying the rent and they wanted to kick you out, they could literally come in and just say, get out, you're not paying, because you are not a renter. You have a license to occupy the unit, okay? Does that ever happen? It never seems to happen. Even when people don't pay, which usually they do pay, the builder will send some nasty letters, but slowly they'll add it to the final closing costs, it'll get taken care of. So, but again, scary stuff. Now, all that I've said so far assumes you're living there, but a lot of times your clients are buying for renting. They're going to buy this as an investor. That's a lot of times what you're going to see. So they're not the ones moving in, their tenant moves in at that time. So imagine this, you're in interim occupancy, you're paying rent to the builder, and at the same time a tenant is paying rent to you. So you hope you're making enough to offset that rent. And with each and every agreement that we do, it's a different answer as to whether you can rent during occupancy or not. With our firm, we go through that with each client individually for each agreement. Because some agreements say, no, you can't rent during occupancy. And that's a trend that's happening now. So we're seeing a lot more of that. Whereas a few years ago, like, yeah, you can rent. Because they know, they're investors. They want to rent during occupancy. So make sure you get a lawyer who actually knows to look for that, number one, and knows to ask for that, number two. And another thing is these days, if you want to rent during occupancy, they might allow it, but they'll charge a little something, like $1,000, $2,000 just so they get some money. Another thing we're seeing a lot of is, yeah, you can rent it, but you're going to use our agent. So we're seeing that a lot, okay? And if you don't sign that, you can't rent it. So that's just something we're seeing a lot more, okay? All of that will lead to an HST talk. Because if you're not living there as your primary place of residence on closing, because it's an investment, then HST comes into play. It's not HST on the whole purchase price, it's an HST rebate. And we're going to talk about that in a bit, okay? I just want to get that going. So now imagine you've done your interim closing, you're living there, or your client's living there, 3 to 6 months have gone by, they've been paying the rent, the building's ready, they finally get their ability to allow you, they register the building, so now your final closing kicks in. And on final closing, that's when you actually pay for the property. Because until now, you've been paying just your deposits, maybe 20%, that's a magic number, 20% you put down, or just close to 20%. If you haven't done 20%, then on occupancy, you bring in one last check to bring it up to 20%. That's typical. So on occupancy, you're going to bring in your rent checks, plus your last deposit, usually, okay? But now 3 to 6 months have gone by, you're living there, everything's fixed up, hopefully, the building's fixed up, registration happened, so now final closing happens. And that's when you meet your lawyer one more time, and at final closing, that's when you bring a lot of money. That's when you bring that 7 to 8 to 9% I was talking about. And I actually brought an example. I'm going to take you through like a 5-minute quick example of like a worst case scenario and what you can see, okay? So, did I cover everything here? Yeah, oh sorry, and finally, at final closing, the deed comes to you. So you actually own the property at this point. Now you could sell, you could rent, that's dangerous. It's dangerous to sell a property within a year of owning it, new construction, again with regard to HST, but we'll talk about that in a minute, okay?
So just to be clear,
Yep.
you're going to, at the final closing, you're going to bring your deposit up to 20% if you only paid 10, which
Usually.
sometimes happens.
Correct, yeah.
And you might, let's say, if you purchase something that was $500,000, you might have as much as $35,000 that you have to bring in cash if you
Nailed
can't
it.
put that on your mortgage.
Yep,
And that includes land transfer, correct?
yep.
And at that time, you would have to pay your rent.
No, you've been paying rent.
You've been paying it all
Up to that
along.
point.
And is the rent going to be established based on like what?
Good, I think I talked about that in a minute, but let's just, maybe not. I'll tell you the 3 things that it's made up of. I think it comes up in like a slide or 2, but I'll just tell you that. So, very good question. When you pay this rent I keep talking about, or interim occupancy fees, it's made up of 3 things. The first thing is an estimate of condo fees, which would be in the budget, and you would have a real good sense of what it'll be every month. So that's in there. Property taxes divided by 12, so whatever the estimate of the taxes would be, which is estimated at about 1%. So like if it's a $500,000 property, oops, taxes are $5,000 divided by 12, you know what you're paying every month, and that's in there. And then finally, the third piece is interest on the unpaid balance. So interest on the 80% you haven't paid so far. And people call that a phantom mortgage, because it looks like a mortgage, it acts like a mortgage, and it really is a mortgage to the builder. It's not registered anywhere, but it is. So that's a phantom mortgage. So all 3 of those components make up this rent that you're paying every month, okay? And we can estimate that in advance, in a rough, good quality estimate before we get to that point. So that's a very good question. I'm going back and forth, but on the interim closing, when you meet the lawyer, you're bringing your post-dated checks, you bring your certified check for the last bit of to bring it up to 20%, and then occupancy fees as well. And you're going to have your carry-on warranty at the time. There's going to be rental insurance you need to provide because you're renting, so you're like a tenant, so you get tenant insurance. And sometimes at this point, you're also asked to prove that you can afford the property. So you might be asked, you will be asked for a mortgage commitment again at this point. But you've already been asked for it early on in the first 10 days because they want to have proof that you can close. And that piece of paper, by the way, at the very beginning is kind of, you know everything I'm saying. Everything I'm saying you're nodding, so you know everything I'm saying. But basically, the piece of paper that you provide at the beginning showing that you can afford it is kind of like a piece of garbage. It has no value because you're closing in 3 to 4 years. It doesn't matter. But you still have to provide it so the builder can put it in their folder, so they can put it in their file, so they can show the bank we have people, real buyers who can afford this property. So we do that, and that's good. We're good to go. So at the final, though, I lost my train of thought there, but I'll come back. So I talked about occupancy fees. I explained this. This answers your question that you were asking. See, I showed 3.34. That's the rate these days. So you know this phantom mortgage I talked about, the third component. They're charging 3.34 or 3.
Yeah, that's 3.64.
Yeah, 3.64. It just changed. 3.64 on the outstanding balance. That's what they're paying. So that's standard. It's based on the Bank of Canada rate. Okay. Oh, I should say, because people ask. No, that rent doesn't go towards decreasing your purchase price. That is extra money that you pay on top of your purchase price, just to be crystal clear. Okay?
So if it ends up being one of those situations where it is 2 years, they're paying a fortune.
You got it. So as the advice that we give everyone is it's going to be 3 to 6 months, or up to a year, which we've seen infrequently, or up to 2 years, which is ridiculous, but we might see it. And nowadays, we're getting them up to 3 years, it's saying. But I've never seen one go longer than 2 years. I think we had one.
Urban Corp.
Urban Corp, and you might have all heard of Urban Corp.
Yeah.
So, but that's an anomaly. So those are outliers. We don't look at that for construction, but we look at that.
That
as-
length of time is
Yeah.
outside.
And there's nothing that can be written into contracts or amended?
You got it. So every builder spends a lot more on their lawyers than you guys spend on us. And those are contracts which they will not bend, because if they have to bend for one, they'll have to bend for everybody. So they just don't. And so they get away with murder.
And we are talking about occupancy. You can occupy for 2 years, is what you're saying.
Even three now.
Ugh.
Yeah.
It's unusual though. You're gonna do your
Yeah,
research on
3
your
to 6
builder way
months.
before
Yeah,
that.
that's a good point. So, you know, and we always say that, it's like, is this a builder that has done a lot of buildings? And they have a good process, and they know you can pretty much tag their delays and figure out their delays within reason. With a new builder, I mean, we don't know their time. We don't know who they're using for their trades. We don't know a lot, so it's a little risky, okay? And taking it a step further, if it's a builder who's not registered with Tarion, because it's a conversion project, which we see sometimes, because you cannot get Tarion if you're converting like a old church or something. Then the Tarion warranty, there is no Tarion warranty, but they give you an equal warranty. So they copy the words from the Tarion warranty and they give that warranty to you. But how good is that warranty? I don't know. It's as good as the person who stands behind it, right? So again, it's a very big risk. But a lot of people do it because they're beautiful properties and they take the risks. They're usually nicer properties. Okay, so I talk here about what you're doing at the meetings with the lawyers, but we kind of touched on that. We can skip that. Okay. Builder's closing costs. I have this little spreadsheet I'll show you if I get my email. Okay. Can you see this? No, not really.
Toronto, where the property.
View. Zoom. More. A little better?
Yeah.
Okay. This is like a typical spreadsheet that we give to every one of our clients that come through our door. We analyze the agreement of purchase and sale, we make a spreadsheet so we can show them the numbers and just say, hey guys, this is really what it looks like. And that's sort of like the best thing that we do, and it's really important. So here's an example, and I changed all the numbers so there's no issues here. I changed all the addresses. But an example is it was signed in Toronto on April 27th, so you have until May 6th at 5 p.m. really, or 4 p.m. to get to deal. It shows you how many parking and locker. But more importantly, down here, it shows the purchase price and then shows all the deposits. And you know, in this case, it was 21%. So this person made all their deposits up, and all the dates are here. And of course, the light blue is that interim closing. So there you go. On the interim closing, they have to bring in their final deposit, bringing it up to 20%. And then they brought in this rent that we talked about of around $1,800. And I do the math up here. You can't see it. But there's your 3.34 or 3. What is it? 3.64 now, right? So you start to see that. And this is all in advance. So in the 10 days, they already have all this. They know all this up front, which is great. But then you go down here, and that's what I want to show you guys, which is important. On final closing, right, you have to pay all these fees. And if you add them up, look, there's development charges, this is like a big one, but development charges, property taxes. When I add all these up, like right down to here, see, this is an additional 63,000 this person has to pay on closing.
12.5%.
Which is 12.5 because I showed an example, an ugly example on
Yeah,
purpose.
yeah.
This is before our firm would get involved, for instance. So like, let's say nothing was capped, like community improvements not capped, park levies not capped, development charges, which are building the streets and schools and sidewalks and parks in the neighborhood, not capped. All those things may not be capped in some agreements. So we and you, as the agents, have a job to get it capped. And so that's what we do, and when we do that, we put in yellow the things we're going to request, and then we make a request to the builder, or we get the agent to make a request to the builder, and then they come back with amendments capping these guys off, down, lower, so that they cannot go higher on final closing, so that the client can rest easy knowing that in 3-4 years when this thing actually closes, they're not going to pay more than this. If they don't cap it, the builder, and these are just estimates, it can go higher and higher and higher, and that's a risk. So you want to be careful, okay? And we tell the client at the end of this whole conversation, hey, we got you everything except this one wasn't, the risk is this to this, and then they can go off knowing that they did a good job.
What's the law society fee?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of little fees,
Yeah.
like the Law Society fee, I mean, yeah, here, 72, they basically charge the seller's law firm a fee just for selling anything. So whenever any lawyer, including us, sells anything, we get a fee by the Law Society.
Really?
Yeah, that's how the Law Society gets their money,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
to help bail out all the bad lawyers who mess up.
Right.
Yeah, not us, of course, of course.
Two questions. The hotter properties, sometimes you can't cap these.
Good, so let's talk about that for a second. So there's the ones where you go in and they're like really nice and there's no lineup and they're willing to work with you, and that's amazing, and there's a lot of those. Then there's the ones, and this is happening more and more and more, where there are lineups of people buying, and you ask the builder for caps, and the builder's like, nope, if you're not interested, there's 5 more people behind you. So then we show our client these numbers, and they can take it or leave it, and they still take it. They all take it, like everyone takes it. But I'm just saying, yeah, very good point. Sometimes they don't. There's no guarantee.
Are there horror stories, like, usually there's no, like, the...
Rarely horror stories. We had one recently where the development charges.
There was an increase in the last, in the last 5 years, about 5 years ago in the city of Toronto. There was a huge, and in Peel as well, Mississauga, there's a huge increase in the development charges for the city, and those were passed on to buyers. You know, it was a big thing in the paper about, oh, development charges, we're getting stuck with these bills of
Right.
20, 30,000 more than expected
Okay.
because of increases in development charges.
So you expected, let's say, 13,000 and you ended with 30,000, so it's still like
Right.
17,000. Still a lot of money, but hopefully the property has increased as well, so.
That's the good thing, I mean,
Is,
yeah.
the development charges, does that sort of speak to infrastructure or
Yeah, well, it's for building
potential infrastructure?
to building the streets, schools, sidewalks, and parks in the neighborhood. So, yeah, infrastructure. Yeah.
And are you finding at all that you can cap these or whatever you do, and then there's a charge or a charge, I can't remember what they're called, but anyways, a charge that wasn't on the property when it was first sold or whatever. This development charges come by way of whatever.
Yeah, usually it's all captured. I like you talking about surprise charges?
Yeah,
No, usually, knock on wood, it's all captured in our spreadsheet anyway, because we do a meticulous review of every single letter. We actually cross-reference the whole thing, because we don't want to miss that, because.
not you,
Yeah.
but
Oh, do
can the
they ever
builder
miss
come,
something?
because we're talking about.
It's capped, so if the builder made a mistake, which they have, and they go over, which they have, we've seen it, they have to eat up those mistakes. So let's say they're over by 15,000, they have to eat up the 15,000.
So then do they come back to you via condo fees later on to get that back?
So good question, so, no, but something's happening there. So let's talk about condo fees after closing for a second. Like, basically, just so you know, we're all gerbils when we move, like, it's just when we move into a brand new condo, we don't know how it's gonna operate. We don't know if we have the right amount of security guards. We don't know anything. So it starts operating, and of course it was budgeted mainly by the builder because they want to show low condo fees to everybody. The condo fees are going to go up in the first year. They're going to go up in the second year. I mean, they go up in all condos anyway, 3 to 5%, but with new construction, it's like 7 to 10% in the first year, second year, even third year, till they find their sweet spot, and then you'll see normal increases of 3 to 5%. So any mistakes that were made will be eaten up in the condo fees in the first few years, but not that mistake, because that's the builder's mistake, and they have to eat that up from their profit.
But if you don't have a capped in your agreement. So
Right.
if the buyer goes without you and you don't
All the
negotiate a
time
cap
we
for
see that,
them,
yeah.
all bets are off.
All bets are off, and we see it all the time, because we have a lot of clients who come to us after the 10-day cooling off period, and I give them this speech, and I say, sorry, but we're here for you to hold you, but you're gonna pay. We're not paying it for you, you're gonna pay it yourself. And then they pay, and they're okay, as long as you, again, manage their expectations. 100%, if you don't have a lawyer in the first 10 days, there are not gonna be those caps, unless the builder's giving them out, which they do often, and you're in trouble, okay? These fees I explained also include our legal fees and then land transfer tax. I just want to touch on land transfer tax for 2 seconds. If you're going to live there, you pay the land transfer tax. If you're not going to live there, you pay the land transfer tax, no problem. But if you're a first-time home buyer, you get a rebate, right? Instead of paying $68 and $67, you're paying $2,327. You're saving huge money by being a first-time home buyer. That's if you're going to live there. So I just want to drive that home. If you're a first-time home buyer, but you're not going to live there, like you're still going to live at home with mom and dad or whatever, then, or whatever, or rent, because you want to make some money. If you're not getting this rebate, you're going to pay full price. You only get that if you can swear an affidavit that you're a first-time home buyer and that you've never owned any property anywhere in the world, okay? People mix that one up a lot, so you want to make sure. We make
If there
sure.
are two people, like.
Then the one, so if the
one
one's,
one is, one isn't, do you get it, or don't?
yeah, if one's living there, like they're not married, let's say,
Okay.
and one's living there, they'll get the 50% of the, they'll get their full
Okay.
rebate, which is 50% of the rebate, yeah.
Okay.
And then there's these things called 99-1, like we can go on title in different ways too. So let's say the first time home buyer is sisters or brothers with the other person, they could take 99% and the other one could take 1% and then they really get the whole rebate. So there's things, but then the legal advice is, hey, but you only own 1%, so you know if the other person dies, they own 99%, and it goes to their family, whereas you only get 1%. So there's all these legal things you can do to save a few $1,000. Not really super advisable, but some people want that. So as long as we give the advice, they can do that. Yeah. Okay. I want to get down to the rebate. Really. Okay, so look, in this case, this person had to bring in an additional $63,000 until we came in. Like if we came in, you know, we'd save them $10,000. So it'd be down, that would be down. But anyway. So then, because this person is not living there, okay, they paid the full land transfer tax. But more importantly, on top of the $63,000, they have to bring in another $24,000 for HST rebate portion. Okay, so they have to bring in on top of the $63,000 another $24,000, bringing the total to $96,000. A lot of money. But luckily, as long as they can put a tenant in there with a 1-year lease, so the key, it has to be a 1-year lease, and the tenant has to be a person, not a corporation, then we apply for them to get a $24,000 HST rebate, and they get a check for $24,000 3 to 6 months later in their pocket, replenishing them back to where they were. So they brought in 96, but really they only needed 63, so they brought in 96, they get a check for 24, so they're back to 63. So it actually costs the same to buy a property to live there as it does to rent. People always think, should I lie? And no, the answer is don't lie. Tell the truth, pay your money, and get your money back. It's okay. You can do that. You don't have to lie. People always ask if they should lie. Well, first of all, as a lawyer, we can't advise anyone to lie, and we don't. Secondly, you don't have to. Like, just understand that it's the same thing.
But you don't get it back if you're living there.
You don't get it back if you're living there, but you don't pay it if you're living there. So this doesn't even apply. So it doesn't matter. So it's the
Okay.
same. Good point.
Was that always the case?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just that a lot of lawyers, and
Lawyers
this
don't
is scary to say
understand
this, but a lot of lawyers don't talk or know about the HST rebate, and they don't get the $24,000 back for their clients. Like I have clients calling me all the time saying, hey, I closed with, I won't say the name, can I now, do you know about this rebate? I'm like, oh yeah, I know about it, we do lots of them. So they send us the rebate, we do the rebates, and we have like a little rebate business going on the side now, because we're literally just doing
3 to
rebates.
6 months.
3 to 6 months. And I gave these clean numbers. I don't want to get too much into it, but there are times where you're paying $27,000 and only getting back $24,000. So sometimes you don't get it all back because
as the fair market value of the property goes between $350 to $450, then the federal part of the rebate, which is about 1/3 of the amount you're paying, it starts to go down to zero as the fair market value goes up. So.
I don't understand that, but I will accept it.
It's the government, Carolyn.
So here's an example actually. So we write old and new. So that was 63,000 before us, and then like just to give you an example, after we asked for caps, we got a bunch of caps, it went down to 60,000. So, you know, save the client a few $1,000 bucks. That's a great thing. Like legal fees are less than that. So you're saving quite a much. Okay. So do all those numbers make sense? Does that spreadsheet make sense? It's super important. Okay.
The caps have to be asked for upfront.
You gotta ask for your caps in the 10-day cooling off period, because at 10 days, you can never ask for anything again. It becomes silent. Okay. So I just sort of touched on everything, but, and I just want to also mention vacation homes. So, you know, when you buy a property like new construction, you're either gonna live there or you're gonna rent it out. But if you buy it as a vacation home, which a lot of clients do, I always say, well, rent it out for 1 year if you can first. Because if you're buying it as a vacation home, then it's not your primary place of residence, so you don't get the $24,000, so you have to pay the $24,000, and you don't ever get it back. So if you buy a vacation home, if you buy a vacation home, you lose $24,000 just like that.
Or if you buy to flip, to sell it right away.
Or if you buy to sell it right away. Okay? So what I always tell my clients, and most listen, I've had a few not listen because the profit was so big anyway, they just didn't care. But I say, you know what, put a tenant in there for 1 year, get a check for $24,000, and then move in, and then use it as a vacation home or something like that. Because you're allowed to. Then sell it, because then you get your money. So, but I have one of my clients, he's a friend of mine, and he said, thanks David, and then he just sold it the next day anyway, he didn't listen. And he made a lot of money, but he has to pay it, he loses $24,000, he's okay.
Using your numbers, it's about 5%, so I mean.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
24,000 is not a small amount, so I would wait, but it depends. Like, it's all about numbers, right? If you're selling, you're making money, and you're happy, it's okay. What else was I gonna tell you? Yeah, everything I covered. Delays, we talked about delays. There's always delays. I want to talk about delays for 20 more seconds. Builders will delay nonstop, and there's nothing you can do. There is compensation you can get up to $7,500 from Ontario if certain events are met, and we would talk about that in more detail if we ever get there. What if you need to delay to the builder? Like let's say it's the closing date is December 24th, and you need a week. For some reason your mortgage is not going through, or you're trying to sell your home and there's a delay, or whatever reason you need a few days. Well, surely they should be so nice to you because you've been so nice to them with all the delays that they've given you, right? Surely they should say, yes, please, take a week. But they don't. They say, no extensions, period. However, we'll extend, but we're charging you $750 just for the request, and we're charging a daily fee of, what is it at these days, $150, $200?
It's usually in the $100 range.
$150 per day, including weekends. And like, screw you too. Like, just throw that in there too. It's like they're so jerky around that time. So that's just something that, you gotta be prepared. So one thing we tell our clients, get your mortgage in order. Around interim closing, get ready. It's coming. Maybe 3 to 6 months, maybe a year, but it's coming. So have everything ready because the final closing comes fast and furious, and you gotta be ready. And if there are delays, you're gonna pay. And you're gonna pay a lot, like thousands of dollars for delays. And we see it all the time. Okay.
Can I just ask
Yep.
about the HST? You keep on flashing on 24,000, 24,000, 24,000. What?
Yeah,
That's the HST on that purchase price that you had.
I am trying to make it easy for this meeting,
Okay.
but
But it is what it is.
but it goes up to as high as, I've seen it go up as high as 27, 28,000
Oh,
for various purchase prices. It's always different based on the purchase price. And we have this convoluted calculator that we use to get the number.
okay.
But you never can get back more than 24,000. So even if you pay 27,000 out, you'll only get up to 24,000 back. So you will lose a few $1,000s.
That's a cap from the government, right?
That's right. And that's normal, and again, as long as the client knows about this in advance, they're okay with
But
it.
you found that regardless of the purchase price, it's around that same amount?
Yeah, it can be 16,000 if it's a lower purchase, like
Okay.
yeah.
24,000 is
It's a maximum.
is the cap, is the maximum you can get back, is the cap on the provincial portion. It's the maximum rebate available
Yeah.
Okay.
on the PST part of HST. HST, which is now PST and GST. So 24,000 is the max rebate available on the PST part. And then there's also a max available on the GST part. And the reason he keeps saying 24,000 is because the most you'll ever pay is 30. The most you'll ever get back though is 24. They're not going to return to you more than that. So So that's why we use that as a sort of maximum number.
And we do all the math in advance, the client's not surprised, like they know everything up front.
We put on the spreadsheet the exact amount.
Yeah.
So that they know.
I noticed it's, there's also tax on the appliances.
Yeah, good, I skipped through a few, but yeah, like, there can be tax on the appliances, they're allowed to, so I always throw it in, and then some builders forget and we don't remind them. But they charge taxes on your free appliances as well. And there's taxes on everything, we actually put in there's taxes on every charge. So every one of those charges is
Every
plus
adjustment,
HST.
every adjustment is subject to
So
tax
it's
as well.
not just HST on the purchase price.
You got
It's
it.
more than
No,
that.
Yeah,
there's
so we
HST
add
on
all
all
that.
the adjustments as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, just before I finish, every builder agreement is different, and so you need to review them separately. They're not all the same. They're 90% the same, 10% different. Okay, so I'm done talking about new construction now. Sonia will then take it to the next step, talking about assignments.
Okay, so you have this new construction agreement, you have a client with a new construction agreement, they say to you, what's this assigning stuff about? I'm thinking of assigning. So what is an assignment? Very basically, you're taking a contract, that builder's agreement, the 40-page contract, and you're just selling it to someone else for a value. There's value to that contract. You've had it for a year, 2 years, maybe 3 years. You bought at a certain value. It's increased in value despite the fact that there's actually no real property. Still, the value of that contract has now gone up, so you can sell it at a premium to somebody else. It's very much just like erasing the original purchaser and putting in a new purchaser. So as a seller, why would you want to assign? You can't complete the contract for some reason. New job, new family, no money, could be any reason you can't complete. Or it was always your intention, this is something you're doing, you want to flip it, make a quick profit, reinvest your funds, whatever it may be, but you want out and you want to make your profit. So that's, as a seller, why you would go ahead and find an assignee. The con to it is that you're still going to be liable for that contract, even if you assign it. So I could sell that contract today to you, and in 2 years, if you don't close, the builder's coming after me still to close that deal. And they're gonna come after me to close it now, when they find out that you
But
can't
they come
close.
after me first.
First,
If I can't
and then
pay,
immediately they're coming after me. They're not gonna sue you first and let it drag out for a year.
they're gonna
And
come right
then
back
come,
to you.
no, they're coming to me that day, the day that you're like, I can't close it and I'm not willing to, and that day they're coming to me and saying, you have to close it,
So don't
you're
spend
in
money.
default. Yeah,
Would
exactly.
you then sue me?
Yes.
You guys just met.
And then we'll let it drag out.
Very much so.
Very unfavorable first impression.
Yeah.
It should just have.
Another con is market
Yeah,
downturns.
use me in the.
Another con is market downturns. So the same way as a pro, you want to sell, you know, when there's an upturn in the market, but if there's a downturn, then you might be stuck with this contract for longer than you want to be stuck with it, and actually even all the way till closing, you never know. And then beware the government. The CRA is really, really, really cracking down on sellers who are selling agreements without paying any tax. It's a gain. It's either a capital gain or it's income. It's one or the other, depending on your personal tax situation and depending on the intention with which you bought the condo.
So we know that CRA has started cracking down on just regular house sales for that reason.
Yeah.
How can not that I would ever want to hide this, but how could something like this ever be caught? Because you've never closed, you've never owned it.
They go through
You're
the building
just-
books or the.
Well,
I
so
think-
the rebate, the HST rebate is going to the CRA. I have heard that they're comparing original names on the agreement to transfers and rebate
I've heard that
applications.
too.
Yeah.
I have heard that they're looking at names. It's all about the names on the agreement.
I
If
heard
the
that they're
inevitable
asking
transfer
builders
doesn't match.
for
Yes.
DVDs or CDs with original purchasers' names,
Yes,
and they're comparing them to who
to
ends up
the
closing.
inevitable transfer that's registered. And if it's different, I've seen letters that my clients are getting saying, your file's been randomly picked for audit, and we want the following information. And one of the questions is always, like I always say to my staff, well, why was it rejected? And is it because the name on the agreement didn't match the transfer? 90% of the time, yes, that's the exact reason why. And they want to see either an amendment showing the change in name, or an assignment because now there must be an assignment, that's the
Right, if
reason
there's
for
an
it.
assignment.
Oh, let me track that assignor now. Did I get paid on that? So that's how, this is what I've heard about how it's coming out, but
So for us, the thing for us to remember is if we have a client who's trying to assign a purchase, so they're selling it, we should make sure that they know this, we've advised them, maybe have it in an email
Yep.
or something,
I
so
say
that.
talk about it when you talk about pricing.
Right,
About how much you're gonna
Right.
settle it for.
Yeah.
You guys are gonna talk price, what are you gonna sell this contract for? So factor into that things like the capital gains or the income tax, like your commissions, like everything. You know, factor it all into that discussion.
And they
And
can
make
pay
sure
the
the
CRA
client
in
is
gift
aware of it.
cards.
Sorry?
They can pay the CRA in gift cards.
Okay, as a buyer, pros. Why would you buy by assignment? You're buying a contract. Lack of inventory in a building. So a lot of people, they just want to get in. I want to live there, I must live there. There's nothing else left except assignments. Often people can get into a building after the product is finished, something visible. Some people are just not comfortable doing it 3-4 years in advance. They need to see something. And it's new. New. The whole unit is new, the building is new, you have a fresh warranty, appliances are new, everything is new, design is new. So the pros, cons is that it's still pre-construction. So because it's new, it's also sometimes half ready for you. When you move in, your common elements will not be ready, your hallways will not be ready, your gym probably won't be, your pool probably won't be, none of those things will be, and you're still paying to live there, and you're paying the exact same amount as you're gonna be paying, you know, eventually, and you don't have access to all that stuff. Another con is the HST rebate. So oftentimes with assignments, just by virtue of it being an assignment, the builder's lawyers, or the builders, on final closing, will take the position that we are not crediting any purchasers by assignment with the HST rebate. We're gonna assume all of you guys are investors, pay it on closing, apply to get it back after closing. We're seeing that
Is that per
increasingly.
build, like, depending on the developer?
Yes.
Yeah, it's not
And
everybody.
usually I find it goes by which ones have been burned in the past by the CRA and which ones haven't, to be honest. Some, they just, I still see some lawyers letting it slide. We purposely don't say anything in our office because I'm like, let me see how they're gonna handle this. So I see some lawyers are letting it slide as long as they have a valid assignment because they're of the position that their client should be okay with an assignment agreement. But some lawyers are saying, no, I'm hands off. We've been burned by the CRA with these before, you guys do it yourself. So.
Did you want to mention, it matters more if it's before or after occupancy?
Sometimes it does, which I'm gonna get to when I
Oh,
get to
okay.
occupancy. So starting up this assignment, so your client says they want to talk about assignment, you talk about sort of the things you know about assignment, now we get into actually making the offer. This is the part that you guys get involved in drafting up all the documents. So first step is you have to get the original agreement, the builder agreement, two-party agreement between the builder and original purchaser. Make sure you have all the amendments in that agreement. Amendments are super important. They're not recorded anywhere, but they can make big changes, like the entire unit or the entire price. So amendments are really important to confirm with either if you're the seller's agent, original purchaser's agent, or if somebody else is, to make sure that it's complete. From that then, you have to draft an assignment agreement. That is
Number two.
the ARIA agreement, yes, exactly. So that's the ARIA form. Does everybody know there's this ARIA form for assignment agreements?
Pretty easy now.
Okay, yes, exactly. It's pretty easy. We're gonna go through, I'll go through the gist of just some of the parts and what to fill in into that form as we're going, as we're moving along. And then the third agreement involved in every assignment. So these two mandatory, builder agreement, the assignment agreement, right? Offer between assignee, assignor. And then there's the three-party agreement now between the builder and the new purchaser and the old purchaser. Because the builder at the end has to sign off on all of your negotiations that you've done. And I don't mean the details, I just mean a final sign off to say, yeah, I approve this transfer. So then that's going to be another agreement that's signed, and that is often referred to as the consent, builder consent.
Do they ever not give it?
Yes.
And for any reason?
But it should be in the original contract. Okay?
Yeah,
Yeah,
usually if
that's-
they don't have enough properties sold, sometimes they'll say we need to have at least 95% inventory sold, or we need to have, at least this much
They don't
under
wanna lose the
construction.
sale.
Exactly, they don't want competition. So they don't want competition from other units until
But
their
that is in the
units.
original agreement, it's not something that they at some point pull out of their hats.
Well, the original agreement is probably going to say you can't assign, period.
Okay,
Period. And now it's up to you to negotiate what level
A
of
bunch of
assignment
easy
they're
labor.
going to
Right.
allow and how many restrictions are gonna be on that. And it can be anywhere from fees
And
to
do they
timelines
charge?
to, sorry,
do the builders charge, they wanna have a piece of the action?
oh yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Oh yeah. That's the-
Sometimes or all the time?
Well, I've seen that they can assign without, I've seen amendments saying they can assign without cost, as long as they do so 60 days before, 90 days before. So definitely your cost can be anywhere from $0 to $10,000, depending on what's negotiated at the forefront in the 10 days, and the project generally, builder. So three agreements. We're going to take an example so that we can sort of have real people. We have David, who excitedly bought his pre-construction for $400,000 from the developer on pre-sale. He plans to live the bachelor life for a while. As part of the agreement, he agreed to pay 20% in deposits by the time occupancy comes around of $80,000. During the building process, he decides he doesn't want to buy the unit. He's met someone wonderful. He wants to buy a house instead, start a family with 3 girls. So he now has a few options. He can either walk away, he's going to breach his agreement, he's going to lose $80,000 in his deposit.
And yes, we've had clients do that.
Oh, but he hasn't paid the full 80, right?
No, but whatever he's paid, up to 80. He can complete the transaction, decide to rent it out, but now he's limited cash flow because he has no money for a down payment for a house because he used it on the condo. Or his other option is to assign or sell the contract. He decides he is going to assign, so these are things for him to consider as part of that decision. Does his agreement have some kind of advance permission by the developer to assign? Every agreement is different. Some of them say you can't assign, some say you can assign with restrictions. So if there's with restrictions, what are the restrictions? Most of them will almost always say you cannot list it on MLS. So how
You
are
can't list these on MLS.
So how are you gonna sell the
So many
assignment?
do.
So many do.
So
So
when
many
they
do.
do, just so you know what we see, they get a nasty letter within
Yeah.
24 hours from the builder saying you're in breach of the contract, we could take this whole thing away from you, keep your deposits right now, but we'll give you 24 hours to remove it. The people then remove it from MLS, and then sometimes they sell it in that quick time.
So that's
So
enough.
I've seen so many.
So many.
So there is,
Not everybody has that agreement, is that?
yeah, and there is the odd builder here and there who will allow listing.
They get a
Especially if they're
certain
sold out.
point, yeah,
Especially if they're sold out and it's getting close to closing,
Right.
then
If they're sold
oftentimes.
out, they've got nothing to lose.
Exactly,
Yeah.
then oftentimes they'll say no problem.
And somebody.
You just have to request special, it's something that they reserve the right to grant consent to. So they reserve the right to control that process. So you need to know what that is. You don't want to get on the wrong side of the builder. And even as a buyer, fine, you have maybe some time to correct your default. But I mean, as a realtor, I don't know, it depends on how much you work with this builder, this particular builder. You don't want to get on the wrong side because they know you're being cheeky when you pull a move like that. It's not, like if I was advising a purchaser client directly who didn't have a realtor, I would advise them differently than I would advise you guys, who a developer would expect has a higher level of sort of understanding about this kind of stuff.
So let's say, they sold out in 48 hours, it's a few years down the road, it's close to closing. They say you can't list on MLS. Is there any way to negotiate that?
Yeah,
Go back?
Just ask.
Just ask.
Yeah.
But usually they'll
Does-
say no,
All right.
but there are other places you can put it online.
There's
Okay.
You just Google that, and there are answers all over.
Yes. There's private
Yeah.
Facebook pages, there's many private pages for assignments. If you get in that circle, you start to see what all those
There's a pool of
spaces
people
are.
who want to buy assignments, so
Yeah,
it all exists out there.
Okay.
yeah. They could charge an assignment fee, so know what that is. Because before David decides to assign, he's gonna wanna know what the fee is, so he knows what's coming off the top right away. And what it's gonna cost him to assign. The assignment fee gets paid by the seller, the reseller, not by the buyer generally. He should know the tax implications on his profit. Is it gonna be income? Is it gonna be capital gains? Speak to a financial advisor, not the lawyer only, because a lawyer can't advise on that. It goes by how you filed, what your intention was, that sort of thing. And he would have to calculate all his other costs, like commissions. And he decides after considering all of that he does want to assign, and the perfect price for him is going to be $500,000. Me, on the other hand, I'm out there, this lonely purchaser. I missed my chance to purchase a unit when the developer was selling in this building, pre-selling. It's now sold out, so I want to buy this property for $500,000. My idea is to pay him his $100K profit and replace his $80,000 deposit, and then he's out of it. When I do
You're
that,
basically giving him 180 grand.
exactly, and when I do that, he's out forever, unless I don't close. In which case they can pull him back in, the builder can pull him back in. And I can decide when to do this. And I can pay in as many, and like this is all a matter of how this 180 gets paid is all a matter of negotiation between us two. Exactly. And we're gonna set it all out in our agreement. Just in plain English language, in Schedule A. That, I owe 180 and this is how I'm gonna pay it. I'm putting 20 down now as a deposit. I'm gonna give another 80 on consent, when the builder consents. When the builder consents, that means they've signed on the dotted line, the agreement's mine. They can't reverse that, right? So I'm happy giving an additional 80 then, and let's say I'm gonna give the balance 80 on unit transfer when the mortgage kicks in on final closing. But I just set that all out in the agreement very easily. Okay, and then when the building is complete on unit transfer, so I pay him his 180, the building's complete on unit transfer, I'm paying the builder the 400 original price, minus David's 80 deposits, which I've paid back to him. So I'm paying the builder 320 plus whatever builder adjustments there are at that time, which we talked about, 5 to 8% of the original price.
And for land transfer tax, if I'm correct, the purchase price remains the 400, not the 500.
500.
Oh, it is the 500.
The new price.
So you may have to have a lot of cash on hand if you're going to do an assignment, because you have,
Exactly,
because you
that's
have
things
to
for me
pay-
to consider.
because you have to come up with the profit in cash, and you can't work
Profit
more than
in
that.
cash,
Deposit.
closing costs in
Well,
cash.
you can defer though, remember that 180, I can defer payment of that.
Make
So I could just make a $20,000 deposit now upon acceptance,
And give him the
20,000.
rest of his money
And
when you
give
give
him-
your mortgage.
Give him
Final,
160 on unit transfer,
Let me,
right? I can choose that, so you would have to structure that based on the affordability of
And
your
your cash flow
buyer.
situation.
Yes, exactly, based on that of the buyer. Most assignors are gonna wanna get paid as soon as possible, their 180, so they can just
Do whatever
walk
they wanna
away,
do.
right? But most assignees are gonna wanna hold back on most of that payment until final closing, so, which is when all their money is coming in from their mortgage and stuff, so.
Yeah, until recently, we would see that the profit would be paid on final closing, which was much more palatable for everybody.
Yeah.
That's not what we're seeing anymore. It's just not. Like, people want their money now. So we're seeing the profit being paid a lot of the times right away on consent. And even us, like, we've done a few of our own assignments, and that's what we want. We want our money right away, because as an investor, you want your money now so you can go buy more properties. So it's, that value is to have the money in your hand. So we're basically seeing that a lot.
Essentially, what you're saying is the environment's competitive. enough
Yes,
can
you got
get-
it. You got it. It's a different world, and the money's got to pretty much exchange hands early on these days. That's what we're noticing more and more and more and more. Okay.
So things for me to consider before I actually make the offer to David is, one of them is gonna be cash flow. Like the 80K David's committed to the builder, when is that due? How much has he paid? What am I gonna be responsible for at this point forward? Am I gonna have that cash available? That's something I wanna consider, because I don't wanna end up in a contract where I'm gonna owe some huge deposit on occupancy because of some reason or another and I don't have it. The other thing I want to consider is the developer adjustments. What are they? Are they capped at all? If they're not capped, maybe I want to take this opportunity now to negotiate with him directly. Maybe he'll cap the adjustments for me. if the builder charges me more than $20,000 in developer adjustments, you'll pay the difference. I'll take it off what I'm paying you, right? We can negotiate that, again, depending on how much competition there is for that particular unit. But, you know, if we have a sort of like a nervous buyer, you know, concerned about uncapped builder adjustments, and a very savvy reseller investor who knows this builder and knows the adjustments aren't gonna go over 5K, they may just say, okay, don't worry, I'll cap it for you at 5K. Okay, great, awesome, let's make this deal. Sometimes it
Those
takes
deals
that
are
much.
harder to make, and then it involves more lawyer time, and it involves, it can get a little ugly. And
Yeah.
a lot of times lawyers, this is not to say bad things about lawyers, a lot of lawyers don't do assignments. So, or even new construction for that matter, but when it comes to assignments, if they're not doing it and we ask them for a cap, they don't even understand what we're saying sometimes. We're like, we know everything's capped, but we want to cap ours at 5,000, and that's what we want. And they're like, huh? So it can get ugly. So it's not common to do that, and don't set up your client's expectations that that's going to
It's true,
happen.
it's very rare that, unless the seller's desperate.
Yeah. Sorry, if the seller's desperate, they need to get out, we say, listen, we'll take it
They
from
have to
you.
agree, right?
But we're capping our risk at 10,000 on top of the purchase price. If it goes to 10,001, you pay every dollar over that. So.
Other thing I would want to consider as a buyer is the unit already passed the occupancy date. This is because of that HST rebate. So on an assignment, in most cases, the new buyer is probably not going to get the rebate. If David's already taken occupancy with the builder, then I, the new buyer, I'm definitely not going to get the rebate. Then I know for sure I'm not. At least if occupancy hasn't passed and he's assigned the contract to me before that, there's a chance that I still may be entitled. But
you ultimately get the other way
you ultimately
around.
get it back, but it's my cash flow,
Right.
right? It affects
For
my
sure.
cash flow, so it's something I need to still take into account, because
Yeah.
am I gonna have the cash flow on final now?
Right.
Because I need money for my down payment too, so am I gonna have the cash flow for all this, for the uncapped adjustments, for the rebate, for the deposit due on occupancy, because that's all coming out of my account, no mortgage. The mortgage comes in for the adjustments later. Monies, another thing, what does the agreement need to be conditional on? Financing, lawyer review, standard stuff, just like in any,
You mean the assignment agreement?
exactly.
Yeah.
These are things I would want to consider, like, do I need financing? Financing's an important one, sometimes people don't get, I've heard they have trouble financing an assignment, I don't know why. But I would always recommend that, lawyer review, always, because there's no harm in it. Everyone expects it. It's never going to kill an assignment deal. Nobody goes into an assignment without a lawyer review condition. And your client's actually buying a whole other contract. So it's like not getting a home inspection to me on a old house they're buying. Like, you're buying an old contract. You need somebody to look at that so you know what you're buying. Otherwise, you could just be buying a whole bunch of obligations that you cannot fulfill.
Do you not put consent in as a condition as well, builder consent?
Yes, builder consent is actually a built-in condition in the fine print of the UREA form already.
Okay.
You can't have an assignment without consent.
Yeah, so it actually can't happen, so it's often in Schedule A as a condition nevertheless. I like to see it because it puts a timeline on it versus just leaving it open. So I do like to put in builder consent because it just kind of solidifies when it's to be done. Monies, the other thing I'd want to consider is when is the money gonna be released. A big talk between us is going to be, when does he actually get money in his hands? Me paying a deposit to a brokerage is one thing, but this is an assignment. It may not close for 2-3 years, so when's he actually gonna get that money? When are you guys gonna get that money to get paid your commission? This is all subject to negotiation now, because we're not just a regular 30-60 day closing where you're just gonna wait. Now you can actually set out when consent happens, the deposit will be released, first to pay towards commissions and then the balance to the assignment. So you can throw that in there now so that you're not hanging around and sticking around for 2-3 years past this assignment while the property is being built. But that's another discussion to be had at the time between the realtors. When does your client want money? When do you want money? How are we going to do this? When is the money being exchanged and when is it going to be released?
Are you going to talk about commission? Like, if I'm the realtor on the original, let's say it was 400,000,
Yeah.
there was a commission, let's say it was 3%. And then there's the assignment,
Yeah.
and let's say I'm involved in that too. Like, am I going to get a part of that assignment increase as well? Like, how does that work?
Well, the way, like, we pay full commission on an assignment. I get full commission statements. So on an assignment here, like, I would get a commission statement.
It's a sale.
It's a sale,
Okay.
at $500,000.
Okay, so instead of 400, you're getting commission on 500. Okay.
Well, but your original commission comes from the builder though, right?
This is, you would hire,
Your 400 commission.
that's a different,
Yeah.
that's a different commission on a different.
If you're the
transaction.
selling, do you mean if you,
Well,
if you did this,
And
you were
like,
just
let's say
selling?
let's say I'm representing the buyer, so
The
the
buyer.
buyer's owning it.
The
So they're
original
buying-
buyer.
Buyer one.
The buyer one, yeah.
Oh, buyer
That's
one,
the buyer
okay, okay, yeah.
And then I represent
Okay.
that buyer as the seller.
So you're getting paid on the sale.
So you'll just get paid on the final
You'll get
price.
paid on the sale and you get a cooperating,
On the purchase.
So there'll be two commissions?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, the original commission plus the assignment.
Two
Okay.
transactions.
exactly,
Yeah.
two transactions,
That-
always
that-
two
that does
transactions
make
and two
sense.
selling parties,
Okay. Okay.
so two transactions, yeah. And most assigners, so we talked about the monies. Okay, and just generally speaking, how much is this whole thing gonna cost? There's gonna be increased legal fees with an assignment. It's not just a regular condo purchase. So we can't just quote our clients, oh, expect $2,000.
And just to
it's
explain
just-
why, there's more lawyers involved, more parties involved, more negotiations involved, more crap involved, for lack of a better term. Yeah.
Well, it's two closings. You're doing one with one lawyer for the assignment, and then you're still doing the pre-construction closing as well with the pre-construction lawyer. So that's already taken care of in sort of a standard fee, but there's this whole other transaction now that has to be done. So your costs go up. Also, LTT is payable on the assignment price. We spoke about that on the higher price. Okay, this is the standard AREA form. That's what it looks like. This is the body of the form. It has 3 schedules that get attached to the body. Schedule A, that's what I call the words, that's the story, just like in every agreement. Schedule B, that's where it sets out the numbers, the builder price, the new price, deposits, that sort of thing. We'll go through each one. And Schedule C, that's the original agreement of purchase and sale. That's actually just the builder agreement that gets attached as Schedule C. Again, just make sure about those amendments, upgrades, that sort of thing. The last thing you want is your client having to inherit some kind of obligation that they never agreed to.
It's a good, just, you mentioned that a couple times, so I think you should say in an email to your client, please confirm these are all the amendments.
Yes.
Because later on, if there was an amendment they didn't give you, and let's say it was like a $20,000 amendment and it affects things and it gets ugly, at least you'll have that email saying, I did ask you for all the amendments, so just put that in writing. Yeah.
So
By the way, we don't want to scare you from doing assignments in new construction either. They're great, and in fact, they might be less work at the end of the day than a whole resale. So there is something to be said about that. But just be careful and ask questions to us if you need.
I don't know about less work part.
What? Well, you're not, okay, I won't say it's less work. I don't know if it's less work. I feel like it's less work because you're not going to so many properties and things like that, but okay. Yeah.
It's just more contract intensive.
Yes.
Yeah, it's more legal work.
Yeah, you have to know what you're doing.
Yeah, it's more paperwork, I would say, less leg work, maybe. So this is the body of the form. 3 Ps are the most important here, the parties, the property, and the price. Can you go to the next slide, David? So for the parties, we have the new purchaser would be me, Sonia. Old purchaser would be David. I'm an assignee, he's an assignor. Real property description, take that straight from the original agreement. Use units and levels, it's really important to use units and levels. Saying suite such and such is not enough. So the unit and level is really important, and make sure parking and locker is always noted one way or another. Don't leave it blank. We have to put our minds to whether or not there's parking or locker, because I've had clients who, it's a very simple thing, oh, I thought there was parking. And after a whole bunch of work, it comes out the smallest thing, which is that there's no parking, and it's like, oh, okay, deal's done. And it's very simply, if we just knew in advance that there is
That's
zero
a kind of a
parking.
big mistake for one of us to make,
Yeah,
though.
it's a-
I don't know.
We
Yeah.
see those, like I do in the
You
resale
won't
world.
see them with our office.
Good. No, not here. Nobody here. But
But
just to put it out there, in the resale world, we review status certificates every day, and realtors forget parking spots and lockers, and I get mad because I'm like, come on, it's an exchange of money for a unit and a parking and a locker. Get that right. Get it right. Get it right every time.
There was
Yeah.
a situation
So
at
sloppy.
Neighborhood where the buyer's agent on the assignment did not check that.
Yeah.
and it was only on
It's
closing.
with new builds, it's easy for that because oftentimes parking and locker is added later.
Yeah, and an amendment, right?
And so you need to be astute and be like, well, how come that price is different from this price? Was there a parking or a locker added?
Like if you
Is
see
it
60,000,
$4,000
you see
difference? Is it
60,000
$20,000
difference, you see like a $40,000 to $60,000 difference, that's a parking spot.
That's a parking
So
If you
it
see
was
10 to
added
15,
after
that's a
their
locker.
initial
You know.
purchase, They went back and said, I'd like to also add
And
a
that
parking spot.
happens a lot.
Okay,
Where people after the original purchase will go back and add a locker or
so
a
that,
parking.
that would be
Or sometimes the
an
builders
amendment.
will offer that in lieu of, like,
Carry on
you know, they'll
conversation.
contact you and say, I can't offer you this anymore, so do you want a locker? You know, cause I can't do this upgrade or that and you've already paid for it or whatever it may be. So that's why those things can potentially get missed by all parties, because I could look at the original agreement, you're looking at the original agreement, everyone's looking at the original agreement, nobody knows there's parking or locker and nobody's asked. That's the important thing. Meaning, put your mind to it, just ask, is there parking, is there locker?
This should be like your second question.
Yeah, it's
Right,
like real
exactly,
simple stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Purchase price will be the new price on the OREO form, always, it's gonna be the 500,000. Deposit, this is always a tough one, I find with agents, they never know how much of a deposit is adequate. Really, that's just a discussion to be had with your client about their cash flow. I try to recommend not giving deposits that are higher than the deposits held by the builder, because you're getting credit for a certain amount. So I wouldn't want to give credit for more than that amount. However,
Every
these
deal's
days assigners just want all their money up front anyway, so that seems like a negotiation that's not,
It's not happening anymore.
it's not happening too much anymore, because there's a lot of competition for these units. Okay. HST, included in, or as per Schedule C, nothing else. You can say as per Schedule C, that means you're referring back to the original
Say
agreement.
included in every time.
Or you can just say included in,
Don't say excluded ever,
yes, please.
because that means you're saying HST is extra. And now you just open up a big can of,
And now you spend
Garbage.
$25,000.
Yeah, or more, because you're saying HST is extra, not just the rebate.
and then you have to call the lawyer, we have to call the lawyer and say, look, the agent just made a typo. And then the agent's like, well, that's a $60,000 typo. It's like, well,
That's a
it
big
was a
move.
typo. And then if you're the purchaser, you yell that, right? And if you're the seller's lawyer, you can say, no, it's not a typo, everyone agreed to it. So it could be a really ugly fight. But then we do fight it and say, look, it's
No, it's really, it's a
a really
serious issue.
serious mistake. It's actually the biggest mistake you can
Because
make.
the seller takes the position that they have to pay HST to the CRA because they're in the business of flipping condos and they're an HST registrant and that was my intention all along.
Be super careful. This is
I
a
do
mistake
this,
you don't
right?
want to make because it'll come back to you. And
No,
we'll
well,
fight.
because lawyer review, so it'll
Yes.
get caught,
Yeah.
right?
Hopefully,
Exactly.
exactly.
Hopefully.
That's something we check, like,
If David and Sonia are reviewing.
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
Then it'll get
Yeah.
caught for sure.
because that's one of the first things you check. It's a $60,000 mistake you can make.
Oh, and the other thing I wanted to say is lawyer info. I don't know where I put it, but please somewhere, next page, sorry. Next one. There's somewhere in there where you have to give the lawyer info, like who the lawyers are.
And then it goes
Just-
back right there,
yeah.
include lawyer, first
Just
line.
please fill it out. And the reason I ask is because of what David actually touched on earlier, which is that sometimes I'll contact a lawyer and ask for stuff and they're like, huh? And it's really helpful for me to see if it's a lawyer who deals with assignments.
We know the lawyers.
I mean, there's like
We know the
five
name
of
right
us.
away. We already know by looking at the names.
I know
A lot of
every name,
stuff.
like, there's five people who I will deal with in the city on assignments in all of Ontario, pretty much. And the rest I know that we just have to walk.
We help
hand to
them.
hand. Like I know how perfect the agreement needs to be, let's just say that. I know how many of the i's need to be dotted and t's crossed based on the lawyer, and I think the lawyer information on an assignment is especially important, because if you have a lawyer who's never done an assignment before, then you want your client's lawyer to just approach them a little differently, maybe make that extra call, maybe just the approach is a little bit different than somebody who does this all the time. So include the lawyer information. We did this. I can move on to this one.
So just to be clear, the HST is payable to the builder, but it's payable upon closing, right? So usually with an assignment, you would not have already paid it.
Correct.
So David in this particular did not already pay. You're getting an assignment, the
Yes.
assignee.
Yes,
And so you,
David's not gonna pay any.
he's not gonna pay it. He's only gonna pay on his profit.
Yes,
And that's not your problem.
Correct.
And you're gonna pay on closing, whether it's 6 months or 2 years, you're gonna pay the builder, the HST, and then you're gonna wait for your rebate.
correct,
Gotcha.
exactly.
But are there also
Yes.
contracts
Nice.
whereby you
That was good.
assign,
Yeah.
Sorry?
are there also contracts with, where in the contract you basically give your HST rebate to the builder?
Builder, exactly. It's built into the purchase price.
Right.
That's if you're living there, so whenever you live.
That's when you're
yeah,
living there, right?
It's automatically
But
built
the
in.
point is, none of that would materialize
Yeah.
until closing
Closing, until
of the
final
actual
closing.
property,
When you,
so.
when you say you give it to your builder, when you get it, you pay it to the builder, then you get a rebate. And
So if you're living there, you don't pay it, the builder applies, the builder will send forms for you to sign to your lawyer, and
Okay.
I'll send it back to the builder. They'll apply for the rebate, they'll get it directly.
So you never pay.
Just
you
based
never-
on the
it's-
forms
it's
you,
clean.
you're not paying them, you're not getting it, you're not
It's a
seeing
wash.
it, it's a wash for you
Gotcha.
because we're doing the paperwork internally.
Okay.
However, if you're an investor, they said, we're not doing any paperwork internally. It's too complicated.
But when you purchase it, let's say you're buying it, in the case of here, David being the bachelor, he's buying it to live in it. So at the time when he's doing all that, it's not until closing that you actually sign off on saying what the intent is. It's not when you purchase the property, is it? I think it's.
You don't
it's
really
both.
ever sign off, to be honest, on what the intent is. It's when he files his tax return, his annual tax return, that he's going to state his intention by paying whatever tax he's paying.
Yeah, but the builder, you have to put.
Whether you're living there or not.
Yeah,
That's
you
a
have to
different,
set-
that's a
Is that
different
done-
HST
Yeah, but that's
consequences.
done, where we're talking about disclosing it to.
Yes, yeah.
That is, I mean, when you're buying it, you're
Occupancy.
saying, oh, I'm gonna live in it. Well, 4 years down
It's
the
done
road,
in
lots can
occupancy.
happen, so, and it's done on occupancy, okay.
Shortly,
You're
usually-
disclosing on occupancy,
Shortly,
assuming
yeah.
it's gonna close in 3
Usually
to 6
shortly
months.
before, exactly, and usually shortly before occupancy, they'll start asking
Yeah.
for confirmation on those questions. Otherwise, the assumption in the agreement is that you are gonna live there.
Okay.
That's the
In which
assumption.
way, because you don't.
You're
pay
gonna live there,
HST
you're gonna
and-
pay 400, you're gonna pay 400, you're gonna live there. And then if you're gonna change any of that, you can change it, tell us at occupancy, and then on final, we're gonna charge you this.
So you know that the advertised price by the builder is always the price
As if you're
where-
gonna live there.
as if you were gonna
Yeah.
live there, whereby the builder gets your money as well as the HST rebate that you would have otherwise gotten.
Well, they don't get you're not paying them the amount of the rebate.
No, but
So they're gonna get it from one person or the other, either the purchaser or from the CRA.
that's right. So,
Correct.
so the 400,000 that they're selling it for actually is for something because it's 4 plus the HST that they're gonna
Exactly.
get from the CRA.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just a way to keep the advertised price down.
Exactly, that's right. Install the doc, okay, so Schedule A, standard conditions, we talked about that, list the documents you're gonna need, so we talked about the original agreement. If occupancy has happened already, you want that PDI list, you want the occupancy statement of adjustments, you're gonna need all that in order to advise your client on what they're getting into, because they're gonna have to assume that occupancy at some point. You're gonna write in here if there's any incentives or anything like that to the deal, just like in a regular Schedule A, any cost caps. Just, this is where you describe again the money, how's that 180K that we talked about gonna be paid? I'm gonna pay X dollars on this, yeah. And just, I always say plain, simple language, like assignee owes the assignor the following amount to be paid as follows.
And would you
1, 2,
say
3,
that
boom, boom, boom.
normally in this day and time, it's the profit is payable upon the closing of the transaction? Like
Is
they
that
want their 100 grand.
That is what they want, but not
it.
every buyer can. You really limit your market when you demand that as a seller, because not every buyer has 180K
Yeah.
for a $500,000 condo.
Well, the
on
80,
hand.
you might not have to pay, but let's say it's 120, what have you seen? Like what,
What do I see normally?
yeah, tell me what,
I see people who get into assignments as having very good cash flow. and assignors
Yeah.
finding those assignees.
They have the money, they know what
Yes.
they're doing, the
Yeah.
cash is ready, we see that a lot, they're
Yeah,
pretty
the money just
sophisticated.
changes hands and it's done.
And I find assignments are often purchased by sophisticated buyers.
Because they're opportunities.
Because
Assignments
they're
are often
opportunities.
opportunities.
They're not first-time home buyers generally.
I'll give you an example, like,
They're
my,
mostly, to be honest, I mostly see my biggest assignment clients are parents buying for their kids.
even us, like, we're always ready, you know, if someone calls us and they say, 4 years ago I signed and I can't close, that's a good deal, you want, and they want no profit sometimes, that's a good deal to buy. Because then you're getting 4-year ago prices today,
That's
and it
right.
might be closing in 2 weeks, you gotta scramble, but you've just made a good chunk of money.
You made all the 4 years worth of
Like
market
a time value of money.
increase.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so I see assignments a lot, because a lot of also parents who are buying for their kids are doing it because of job or school graduation or something like that, so they want a new place and they want it now. So they are not gonna wait 4 years, and for some reason, they're just not interested in a resale, so we just see a lot of that happening. The other thing in your Schedule A, most important, is the closing date. So you'll notice on an assignment agreement, there's no section to fill out a closing date, because the closing date for an assignment is just when the final penny is paid. And set it out, when is that gonna happen? You know, because that's really your assignment closing date. That's why it doesn't have a closing date, because you can't really close it, because it's just, you know, when is everybody finally paid? And it's gonna be at some point prior to the unit transfer date. And sometimes your assignment closing date is the same as your unit transfer date, it's the final closing date. So just put that into your Schedule A, whatever it is. Again, Schedule A, you're gonna set out if occupancy is completed with the developer, if your client, the assignee, is gonna take over occupancy, how's that gonna work? Just set out the story of how it's gonna look like from your client's perspective. They're gonna want some keys, they're gonna have to pay over some money, who's gonna do that, when is that gonna happen? But that's all stuff that you have to put into your agreement, because you have to mimic that occupancy process, you have to mirror it in your own assignment agreement now, so that your client can get occupancy, because no assignor is gonna wanna sell you an assignment and not give over occupancy. They don't wanna pay occupancy fees anymore, so. So that's something also that you have to sort of set out in your Schedule A, that they'll assume occupancy on such and such date, they'll deliver occupancy fee checks, if there's an additional deposit due at that time, set it out. Again, just plain English language, when it comes for lawyer review, if we understand it, that's all that matters. We just need to understand it, we need to all just agree on when the money is exchanged, there's no like formalness to any of this. Okay, next one.
Oh, you sure you did this one already?
Yep. So this is the Schedule B. The Schedule A, you tell the story in Schedule A, how's it gonna look like from your client's perspective. This is your filling out of Schedule B. So you put your assignment price in your Section 1, the builder price in Section 2. Section 3, this is the original deposit that David gave to the builder. And this is where everybody forgets to fill it out. You have 3 options here. You can't see them. But one of them says like upon acceptance of this agreement and receipt of consent. One of them will say upon final unit transfer date. One of them's another option, but you can pick when that amount is gonna be paid. So right now I said I'm gonna pay it upon acceptance and receipt of consent. So meaning the second the builder signs consent, I'm gonna deliver another check to David for $80,000.
And just to be clear, the $80,000 is whatever David has paid to date. It's not the 20%.
To date, exactly.
It's the money that has
Exactly.
flown up to that point
Yeah,
to the builder.
paid, yeah, exactly, paid.
He may have only paid 10%,
Yeah.
He may have
and then
only
the other
put 10 in
10%
there.
is due on closing.
Exactly, exactly.
Just be careful not to overpay the guy.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So here I've decided I'm gonna pay it on consent. So Dave, this is where you put the profit, line
Wait,
4.
this one's one that agents get wrong all the time, this little paragraph here.
That's what I was just
Oh, you just
talking
explained,
about,
okay,
those
good,
3
sorry,
options.
okay.
Here's where you put the profit, so the difference between the two. So that's the amount payable for this assignment, meaning not for the unit, but for this assignment, for the sale of this contract.
Profit for the assignment.
Exactly. 20,000 is the deposit that I gave with this agreement. It's on the first page of the agreement, on the AREA form, it says 500,000, deposit on acceptance 20,000. Okay, so that's what you put here, the agreement, the deposit with this agreement. That leaves a balance of 80K that's due. It says balance of payment for this assignment agreement. doesn't tell me when. Right? So I'm gonna assume unit transfer unless there's something else in Schedule A or somewhere else saying that we're gonna set some kind of different assignment date.
Hold on a second, but if you, can you go back to the slide? So if you have, so 100,000 is David's profit,
Yeah.
you've given him 20, you owe him 80.
Of the
And
the profit.
80, I
But
owe
you
him 80
also owe
and
him-
80.
So
I owe
you
this,
really
this,
owe
and
him, yeah, so you
160.
160, okay.
180, 1, 2, 3,
Sonia?
Sorry?
180.
No, but if you give him 20,
Yes, then I owe 160,
right, then you owe
exactly.
him 80 twice.
Right, and I'm gonna give 80 on consent, and I'm gonna give
Right.
80 on final.
Right, okay. Yeah.
If I'm David's realtor and he's selling this, is my brokerage holding that 20,000
Yep.
until occupancy or closing?
So whenever you tell me
Whatever
in
it
Schedule A. So you could say in Schedule A that 20,000, along with this 80,000, right, will be released to the assignor. Will be released to the agent's commissions and the balance to the assignor on consent. I see that very commonly.
So I, as the listing agent of this, could be paid 3 months before actual closing
Oh, I know.
from David.
Mhm.
And then.
Well, that is the closing though, because there's no
Right.
closing.
Right, but what about the original commission? Let's say I sold David the unit originally, he was my
That's
buyer.
later.
That you wait for in the regular.
Right, but then you
That's
would
from the
get,
buyer.
like I would again get paid
Yeah,
on
Yeah.
that
Separate
closing.
transaction.
Because you sold it twice.
Yeah.
Well, it depends what you,
once you
Like
act in
you've
for them
set
as a
up,
buyer,
right?
and that's a transaction, and once you act
I
in
don't know,
for
but
as a
it
seller.
depends on, I don't know what the builder agreements look like
I mean,
for,
they're anywhere from
for
2
brokerages.
to 5%
Yeah.
depending, right?
So as long as there's nothing in there that says like if you also,
Act as an assigner.
you know,
agent.
resell the unit for the
Right.
purchaser.
Right.
Like, I don't know if there's something like that, but
Never heard
otherwise
that.
theoretically, yes, you are a selling agent 2 times, so, cool. You get 2
So
times the
full commission, whatever you negotiate,
Yeah.
so 2 different transactions.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, when you're a
purchase-
buyer's agent and you've been negotiated with the builder, that's
Yeah.
one.
And then
And now you're doing a
the
sale,
listing
and that's
agent.
another.
so what often do you see when you're working as the selling agent who's assigning it, and you've got the deal, and you've got the consent? Often, what are you seeing that is being arranged for the agent? Are they getting?
90% of the time I see the agents getting paid out of the deposit early.
Are they mostly doing a full?
And 90% of the time I see the assignor getting this money. I don't see money sitting in trust, in a brokerage's trust account,
No.
for assignments for very long at all. Like, it's not, like, it's like a normal deal almost. The intention is 30, 60, 90 days that we're moving this money. And that's what I'm seeing mostly. I don't see brokerages holding it for a prolonged 1 year or 2 years. And like, I see that there's definitely an intention to move the money, otherwise the assignor could hold it themselves.
Right.
Mhm.
Right, and benefit from the increased value. If they're happy not having the
Yeah,
cash,
they want their money.
usually
Yeah.
they're only selling because they want cash in their pocket. If it's not gonna be in their pocket, but it's gonna be in trust somewhere,
They
then
might as well not.
they might as well hold it
Yeah.
as long as they can assume that risk, right? It's only the really, really fearful one who's like, I have a buyer now and I can't close. It's only that one who's gonna really
Yeah.
have a
Because they're
problem.
getting their money back
Yeah.
on what they put in the building.
Okay, Schedule B, that's pretty easy. Once the assignment is firm, then the assignor gets developer consent, approach the sales office, everyone has their own process for how they're gonna want you to seek consent. Some are gonna say, go through your lawyer, then come back to us. Some are gonna say, here's all the forms. You're probably gonna have to submit some ID forms and some mortgage approvals and that sort of thing. Once you submit everything, your package, they're gonna come back to you and either say there's no consent, because we're not consenting at this time, which frankly we should have known earlier, because
Should never get
part
this
of
far.
agreeing, exactly, part of the original agreement review is, do I have permission to assign? What are the parameters? I approach the sales office, do I need to know anything else? I'm about to market this thing for assignment. You know, so that should have been part of the process anyway, so hopefully you don't get that far. The likely reply will be, we'll consent on terms, and the terms are gonna include an assignment fee. Once that is paid and the consent signed by 1, 2, 3 parties, original purchaser, new purchaser, and builder, now you have a firm deal. In the
So
name of
these-
the new purchaser and the builder, other guys out.
And the assignment fee is getting paid by David.
Yes.
And is that stipulated anywhere in the agreement or how?
It'll be
Because
in-
I didn't see the $10,000 or whatever the fee is anywhere in there. So
So,
how's that getting done?
so it's in the original agreement,
Right.
potentially,
In the builder's agreement?
builder's agreement.
Yeah.
And it's in the ARIA form agreement, that it's a condition to get builder consent. And so in order for the seller to sell, they have to pay the fee.
So David's just worked that fee into his profit.
Yeah.
And is $10,000
Yeah.
quite typical?
It's high, I find it to be high.
Could be 5, right?
Yeah, I find 10 to be high. I often see 5, even 7, I find 10 to be a little bit high. But I err on the side of caution if you don't have something stipulated.
So before the agreement goes firm, David pays the builder?
Before the assignment agreement goes
Yes,
firm.
that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah, it can't
David
go
pays the
firm.
builder.
It can't go firm until he pays the builder, gets that consent agreement signed.
So that condition needs to be.
They won't sign without payment.
So that condition needs to be
It's the final
a
condition.
bunch of days until that gets sorted out?
Yes,
Okay, how long do you find that typically is, like
weeks.
Weeks.
So David can't be broke, he has to have that $5,000 to hand over before he
Yeah.
gets his 100
Yep,
and 80
Yeah.
potentially.
yes. Although there's ways that we can sort that out too.
Gotcha.
Where we can make it so that it comes out of, like, in some cases, for example, the buyer will pay, but it'll come out of the money that we're gonna pay today, with the 80,000 I'm gonna pay or something.
Right, so it just gets deducted from
Exactly.
whatever.
Because
the
you may not have
SME
the cash
owns.
flow right now, and I do, so we can work that out if it's something that we know
Right.
about, so we can work it
And
into
you
the
want the
contract.
deal, you want the deal.
Exactly, like when you have motivated parties, there's ways that we can work around everything, we just have to write it in. We just need to know what do you want, and then we write it in. Okay. So once the deal's firm, then we just wait for notice of interim or final. It's just a regular purchaser buying a pre-construction now suddenly. The assignment's over on the signing of builder consent. Pretty much from your perspective, you don't have to worry about anything once that's done, except maybe the release of your money when you get your commissions. Okay. Did you want to talk more about, do you guys, I was going to talk about HST rebates, but
I think we did.
I feel like we did a lot of
Yeah.
talking about HST
Yeah.
rebates, so
Yeah.
unless you guys have questions,
Is there any way
I'm just
to
gonna skip these
avoid
two
the,
slides.
You have to occupy it.
Yeah.
You have to
let's say
occupy it
David's
for
the
years
original
and not
purchaser, is there any way to avoid
Correct.
the liability of them coming back to him than the new purchaser?
By saying included in, that's one way, where it says HST.
I forgot HST, I'm talking about the whole thing, like with the assignment, you said.
Oh, you mean for the,
If she's
Like the
buying
personal
it.
Let's say you
assignment,
can't close,
Make sure you've got a qualified
can he
purchaser, I guess.
mitigate in this agreement somehow? I guess that's what you're
That was
asking.
my question. Thank you, though. Yeah, David's the original purchaser, and I'm the assignee. And I can't close, so they're gonna go back to David. So is there any way of David up front saying, I relieve myself of the liability when I did the assignment?
No,
it's
because that liability's already been,
Because in resale, there's
no,
covenant.
I've already said to the builder, I'm closing.
the developer will never agree.
Okay.
That's why,
Okay.
that's why.
Okay.
That's really the reason why. They will just never agree. They got financing for this construction based on X number of firm purchaser agreements with supporting evidence that all those purchasers can close. So if any of that changes, their financing is in jeopardy now, their construction
It's a
financing.
three-way, it's not a two-way.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the developer's rules are not coming just from them, but they're also coming from their financiers. That if you are going to allow assignments out of these purchasers' names who we've vetted, then here are the terms on which you're going to
Okay,
do
that
so.
makes sense.
And one of them is that we want the original guy in the
So
deal
deal
still.
liable.
Exactly.
But David could, if Chip screwed up and couldn't close, David could then scramble and close.
Yep.
Or he could quickly try to find a
Another
24-hour
assignment,
assignment or 48 hours, find another assignee
Yeah.
again, right?
Put it on
Yep.
the left.
Yep.
Take it down.
Okay.
But he's not going to give him the profit back that he paid, is he?
I wouldn't.
How do you come up with the value of what David wants for that property? Is it just what you want and then you try to
Yeah,
sell it?
so I mean, I would go through that process of what's it gonna cost me to sell this property first in taxes and commissions. And then I would just, usually I look for comparables, right? Same as everything. And then he has to decide if it's something that he's comfortable proceeding with or not. He may walk away with nothing and he's like, well, it's not the right time for me. I'm gonna wait an extra year. I'm gonna, you know, but that's a discussion for the buyer and the, I mean, for the seller and their agent.
It's also his personal circumstances, like if he has like 3 children in the meantime, he
Exactly,
needs,
like
he needs
does he
the
need the
backyard,
cash,
then-
does he, you know, is he
Right.
leaving the country, like everybody has their own. Yeah, so HST rebates, I just wanted to say, if there's ever any questions about HST rebates or your clients have any questions, like, we can give exact numbers to clients. I know it's a lot of numbers flying around, but we can, it goes by purchase price, how much HST rebate you will pay, and so, and it's like, it's not even one formula, there's 4 different formulas depending on what range of the purchase price you fall in. So it's a little bit of a complex formula, but any of your clients who need to know that and so what am I gonna pay, like we give them the exact number. So it may seem a little bit theoretical to you guys here today, but it makes a lot more sense when we have that spreadsheet.
So here's something that happened to me, and give me your take on it if you will. So I had a purchaser who was looking at buying an assignment, and it wasn't his, so his daughter lived here, and he wanted to have a place for him and his daughter to stay in while he was in Canada, but he wasn't a Canadian resident. So he had to pay the foreign buyer tax, so we figured that was just a given. But we couldn't really figure out whether or not he was gonna get an HST rebate, and I thought not, but I wasn't 100% sure. What would you say?
So I would look at whether or not occupancy had happened,
So,
and was his daughter
His daughter was
there?
occupying
his daughter
it?
was just a little girl. So he was gonna occupy it, but only, you know, a few weekends a month.
But he's still living there, so
But he
he's
does live
occupying.
there, he just doesn't live there
Yeah.
all the time.
This is the vacation property that we call, this is what we call the vacation property or the secondary residence, which causes a big problem for a lot of people. If you have a secondary resident, you are not going to be entitled to any of the rebates.
So if he ends up
It's not primary.
going for status of, like he applies for permanent resident status, then maybe he might
Yeah.
be.
And he
But
could
then
say
he'd
it's
have to
primary
live there,
residence.
right?
Yeah, well, he would live there, 183 days
Still
of 365, he has to be in Canada.
And they want to.
And I don't know how they know.
I don't know either.
So
Okay,
let's say
so
he
it's
gets
still
that
a
status
tough-
2
tough
years from
question.
now, can he then still apply for the HST rebate, or is that window closed?
Oh, I think it's, I think you have up to 2 years, I don't know exactly how long it's
2 years.
open. I mean, 2 years?
So let's say he gets it within that window, he can still retroactively apply.
No, because the first occupant has to be he has to be the first occupant then, living there as his primary residence. You can't rent it and then switch it to primary residence and then apply.
But let's say he uses it as a vacation property.
So that's okay then.
That's okay.
Yeah, he
As long as he-
will apply as his primary residence, that it's always been my primary residence. That's how he has to apply. There's only 2. There's either a rental or a primary residence. So he would have to apply at that time as primary residence. I don't know if they would give it or not because he wasn't
So
a
I'm
resident
shade
at the time that it
Yeah.
started. So
Yeah.
they may require some other kind of evidence, like nobody else lived there, like, you know, I don't know. It's a little bit more of a
Yeah.
specific fact scenario.
So that's expensive for him, he doesn't get the HST back, says he.
Oh, yeah, he bit the bullet, he had to pay it. Yeah, he had
Yeah, he wouldn't have to pay it.
$15,000 in,
So if if he's treated as a foreign buyer, then he wouldn't get a rebate regardless. You have to pay taxes, right?
yeah, I mean, his lawyer informed him that there were ways to get around it, but it all felt a bit shady to him,
Yeah,
so
it
he.
would have been.
Yeah.
Feels shady.
Guys, I'm gonna run out, I'm gonna leave you.
We're done.
2, we're done?
They,
Done?
oh,
Thank you.
coming to speak to us, guys, so great. So great.